In a galaxy painted with the ashes of fallen civilizations, one name whispered in fear across 1,000 worlds was Ignis, the dragon. Not a creature of myth, but a living engine of cosmic destruction. For millennia, Ignis had been the galaxy's apocalypse, a being of scales and starfire that erased entire species from existence. Planets were reduced to molten rock, fleets of warships to drifting scrap. The Cathar, a race of silicon giants, tried to trap it in a gravity well. Ignis simply consumed the singularity and turned their home system into a supernova. The psychic synod of Velar attempted to soothe its mind, only to have their collective consciousness shattered into a million screaming echoes. Across the void, every race, from the mighty to the meek, learned a single, brutal lesson. When you hear the name Ignis, you run. You abandon everything and flee to the darkest corners of space, praying it doesn't follow. Its roar was the sound of a star dying, its breath the fire of creation turned to an unmaking flame. No weapon could scratch its obsidian hide. No strategy could outwit its ancient, malevolent intelligence. It was not just a creature, it was a fundamental law of the universe, the final, fiery period at the end of a civilization story. Across the galaxy, warning beacons, relics of long-dead races, broadcasted its image, a colossal serpent of shadow and fire, with eyes like twin neutron stars. The message was always the same, translated into every known language and dialect: do not engage, do not provoke, flee. For generations, this was the accepted wisdom, the grim reality of a cosmos that contained a monster it couldn't kill. Then, the humans arrived, latecomers to the galactic stage. They were seen as fragile, emotional, and hopelessly naive. They established colonies on planets other races had deemed too dangerous or strategically worthless. One such world was a small, green moon named Alara, orbiting a gas giant on the very edge of charted space. It was a peaceful, unassuming place, a haven for families seeking a quiet life far from the galactic core. The colonists knew the legends of Ignis, of course. They were stories told to frighten children, cautionary tales from a universe far crueler than their own little corner of it. They never believed the apocalypse would come for them. One day, it did. A shadow fell over Alara, eclipsing its sun. The sky turned a terrifying, bloody orange. The temperature spiked, and the air filled with the scent of ozone and brimstone. Ignis had arrived. Its colossal form blotted out the stars, scales shimmering with the light of captured nebulae. Panic, pure and undiluted, seized the colony. Evacuation sirens wailed a frantic, useless plea. People scrambled for shelters that they knew would become their tombs. The Colonial Defense Force, a handful of aging orbital cannons, fired pathetic streaks of light that splashed harmlessly against the dragon's hide. On the ground, everyone ran. Everyone except one. A small child, no older than 6, named Lily. She had been in her family's garden, tending to a patch of earth flowers her parents had painstakingly cultivated. When the sky turned dark, she didn't scream or cry. She just looked up, her blue eyes wide with a strange mix of awe and curiosity. While her parents were desperately trying to drag her to the shelter, she slipped from their grasp. The colonists watched in abject horror from the viewport of their underground bunker. On the main screen, they saw the tiny figure of Lily walking out onto the open field, directly toward the descending behemoth. The dragon landed, the impact shaking the very foundations of the moon. Its head, larger than a starship, lowered until its snout was mere feet from the child. One of its eyes, a swirling vortex of incandescent energy, fixed on her. The colonists held their breath, waiting for the inevitable gout of flame, the horrifying end to their last, foolish hope. This was it, the end of Alara, the end of them all. Lily just stood there, unafraid. She looked up at the terrifying creature, a monster that had unmade empires, and she saw something else, loneliness. In its vast, ancient eyes, she didn't see malice, but a sorrow as deep as space itself. She reached into the small pouch she carried, the one where she kept her treasures. She pulled out a single, clumsily woven daisy chain. The galaxy watched through 1,000 distant telescopes, utterly baffled. Every other species had met Ignis with phasers, torpedoes, and psychic assaults. This human child was offering it flowers. Lily held up the daisy chain. "You look sad," she said, her small voice barely a whisper against the low, rumbling growl of the dragon. "I made this. It always makes Mommy feel better when she's sad." She took a small, hesitant step forward and placed the fragile ring of white and yellow flowers at the very tip of the dragon's colossal, smoking snout. A profound silence fell over Alara. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The dragon, Ignis, the world ender, the great devourer, did not move. It simply stared at the pathetic, Beautiful little offering. Then, something happened that no one in the universe could have predicted. A single, shimmering tear, the size of a boulder and made of what looked like liquid starlight, welled up in the dragon's fiery eye. It rolled down its scaled cheek and splashed onto the ground, instantly crystallizing into a flawless, glowing diamond. The dragon let out a soft sound. It wasn't a roar of destruction, but a low, mournful croon, a sound of unimaginable grief finally finding a voice. The galaxy was in shock. The Cathar High Command, monitoring the event, couldn't process the data. The Synod of Velar felt a wave of emotion so pure and powerful it nearly overwhelmed them again. But this time it was not pain, but a catharsis that spanned eons. What was happening? For millennia, every race had treated Ignis as a threat to be neutralized. They met its fire with more fire. They saw a monster and brought their weapons. The humans, or at least this one tiny human, had seen a creature in pain and brought comfort. They hadn't tried to fight it. They hadn't tried to flee. They had tried to understand it. In that single, impossible moment, the nature of humanity was laid bare for the entire cosmos to see. They weren't the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but they had something no other race seemed to possess in such a raw, untamed form: empathy. The capacity to look into the face of the apocalypse and offer it kindness. Ignis slowly lifted its head, the daisy chain still perched delicately on its snout. It looked at Lily, then at the trembling colonists huddled in their bunker. It could have burned them all to cinders in a heartbeat. Instead, it unfurled its massive wings, and with a powerful downbeat that kicked up a gentle, warm breeze, it rose into the sky. But it didn't leave. It began to circle the moon, its fiery breath now weaving intricate, glowing patterns in the upper atmosphere, creating a shield of light, a protective aurora that bathed the entire world in a soft, beautiful glow. News of the Alara pacification spread like wildfire. The galaxy was abuzz with a new understanding. Humans were not to be feared for their weapons or their ambition. They were to be feared for their heart, their unpredictable, illogical, and overwhelmingly powerful capacity for compassion was a force more potent than any superweapon. It could turn the galaxy's greatest threat into its most powerful guardian. From that day forward, the warning beacons changed. The old message of flee was replaced by a new one, broadcast in every language. Do not engage with hostility. Send the humans. The story of Lily and the dragon became a new kind of legend, a testament to the fact that true strength isn't about the power to destroy, but the courage to connect. Ignis, once the symbol of ultimate destruction, became the sworn protector of humanity's corner of the galaxy, its fiery presence a warning not against itself, but to any who would threaten the species that had shown it the first kindness it had known in millions of years. The universe learned that day that you don't fight a fire with fire. You fight it with a childish, unwavering belief that even the darkest monsters might just need a friend. The fate of the galaxy wasn't changed by a grand strategy or a technological marvel. It was changed by a little girl, a handful of flowers, and a profoundly human act of love. And that, more than anything else, is why humanity is different. For long, agonizing seconds, nothing moved. The child's lips remained pressed against the dragon's colossal scale. A powerful heat radiated from the creature, yet it didn't burn. The ancient being, a terror of the cosmos, didn't roar. It didn't flinch away. Silence, heavy and absolute, pressed down on every ship watching from orbit. Alien commanders stared at their screens, their multiple eyes wide with disbelief. This was impossible. This was wrong. Every historical record, every fleet log, said the same thing. The dragon annihilates anything that dares to approach it. Warships, cities, entire species had been turned to dust. Yet now, a single, tiny human child stood unharmed before it. The dragon's massive eye, a swirling orb of molten gold, studied the child with an intensity that made hardened generals tremble. But it wasn't the gaze of a predator studying its prey. It was something else entirely. It was a question. Slowly, deliberately, the dragon began to lift its head. The very stone of the broken moon beneath it cracked and groaned under the immense weight. The moon itself trembled, sending a cascade of shattered fragments drifting silently into the void. Emergency warnings blared to life across thousands of control rooms. Race for impact. An alien officer shrieked into their comms. Human ships, poised and ready, powered their shields to maximum, expecting a torrent of planet-shattering fire. But none came. The dragon simply moved its head back, creating a sliver of space between itself and the child. Its glowing eye narrowed slightly, the fiery light within it softening. The child felt the ground shake violently, but held their ground, unmoving. The small transport platform that had brought them here powered down completely, its lights flickering out one by one, leaving no path for retreat. The child was now utterly alone. On the bridge of the human flagship, leaders frantically tried to open an emergency channel, but their words dissolved into static. The dragon's mere presence was so powerful it bent the fabric of spacetime, twisting energy and communication into meaningless noise. The child looked up. So small, so fragile against the backdrop of this living mountain. One of its claws could crush a metropolis. The shadow of one wing could darken an entire world. Yet, it did not attack. Instead, it slowly, ponderously, lowered its head again. This time, it brought its eye level with the child, so close that the child could see their own reflection in that burning golden surface. Fear should have been a tidal wave, a paralyzing force. But it wasn't. The child simply lifted a hand again. The movement was not shaky or rushed. It was slow, deliberate, and careful. The dragon watched every inch of the motion. Alien observers held their collective breath, certain this was the final moment. Then, the child placed their hand gently, firmly, on the dragon's warm scale. A shockwave of pure energy erupted through space. But it wasn't fire. It wasn't destruction. It was demotion. Alien sensors across the fleet went haywire. Energy readings spiked and twisted into patterns that defied every known law of physics. Some ships momentarily lost artificial gravity, their crews floating helplessly. Others drifted sideways as if caught in a bizarre, invisible tide. The dragon felt something it had not experienced in millennia. A touch without threat. A touch without malice. It remembered fire and pain. It remembered countless fleets bombarding its ancient nest. It remembered being hunted, feared, and analyzed from afar. Every creature that had ever approached it carried weapons, or hunger, or both. This one did not. This child's touch was warm, soft, and impossibly calm. A deep, low sound rumbled from the dragon's chest. It wasn't a roar. It wasn't a warning. It was the sound of a mountain range settling after a long and violent storm. Alien translation software struggled, spitting out gibberish. This is impossible," one alien scientist whispered, their voice trembling. "No species does this," another replied from a different ship. "No species approaches a god of death without fear." The dragon slowly pulled its head back and shifted its colossal body. Its massive, star-flecked wings unfolded slightly, blotting out entire constellations behind them. A few of the more cautious alien captains, convinced this was the calm before the annihilation, ordered a full retreat. But the dragon simply turned its head away from the child. In its ancient language of instinct, this was a profound sign of trust. The child lowered their hand and smiled, and that simple smile sent a new kind of fear rippling through the galaxy. Because the humans, it seemed, understood something the others did not. Later, classified human records would reveal the truth. This child had grown up on the lost colony worlds of the frontier. They had seen skies burn. They had seen fear consume the eyes of every adult they had ever known. They had learned a fundamental lesson. Monsters were often born from pain. The child didn't see a beast of destruction. They saw an eternity of loneliness. The dragon's breathing slowed, each exhalation no longer a superheated gale. The ambient heat in the region dropped noticeably. The molten cracks on the moon's surface began to cool and darken. For the first time in centuries, the space around the dragon felt quiet. Alien commanders resumed their frantic arguments. "It must be a trap," one insisted. "No," another countered grimly. "This is far worse. If the humans can do this," a third voice added, "what else are they capable of?" Ignoring the panicked fleets, the dragon slowly laid its head down upon the broken moon, resting it fully. The movement alone shook nearby debris fields, but the message was clear and undeniable. It was choosing rest over destruction. The child took a single, small step back, respecting the creature's space. They did not run. They did not turn away. The dragon closed its golden eye. Fully, a living nightmare, the terror of 1,000 star systems, had chosen to sleep. On the human ships, weapon systems powered down. The alien fleets, however, were paralyzed with indecision. Their greatest, most unsolvable threat had just been pacified by something no weapon in their arsenals could ever replicate. A child. Minutes passed like years. Nothing exploded. Nothing burned. Finally, a voice entered the mind of every living being in the system. It was not spoken with sound, but with pure thought. Ancient, powerful, and laced with a deep, resonating sorrow. "Why are you not afraid?" The child blinked, surprised by the contact, but did not falter. The mental words were gentle, heavy with the weight of ages. The child answered without speaking, sending a thought of their own, pure and clear. "Because you are sad." The dragon did not respond right away. The galaxy waited. Stars burned quietly in the distance. Fleets of warships floated without orders. All of history seemed to pause, holding its breath. Then, the dragon's voice echoed in their minds once more. "No one has ever seen me as anything but death." The child placed a small hand over their own heart. "My people know loss, too." The dragon's massive body shifted one last time. Not in anger, not in threat, but in something akin to acceptance. Across the galaxy, alarms slowly fell silent. And in that silence, every alien leader, every commander, every scientist came to a chilling, unanimous conclusion. They had feared the dragon for millions of years, but they should have been fearing the humans. Because humans didn't just fight monsters, they understood them. And this was only the beginning. The dragon remained still. Its massive body rested on the broken moon. Wings folded, claws relaxed. The fire that once leaked from its scales had faded, leaving only a soft, internal glow. For the first time in what felt like millions of years, space itself seemed calmer, as if a great and terrible danger had finally stepped back. And before this creature of legend, a single human child stood quietly. All around them, alien fleets hung motionless in the void. On the bridges of human warships, commanders held their breath, their voices silent. No one dared to break the spell of this impossible moment. Every species watching, from every corner of the galaxy, understood they were witnessing something that should not exist. The dragon, the unmaker, the eater of stars, had spared a human child. Inside the dragon's ancient, colossal mind, memories stirred like sediment at the bottom of a forgotten ocean. It remembered the very first world it destroyed, a green and blue marble, vibrant with life. The dragon had not wanted to burn it, but ships had swarmed its nest, their weapons crude but numerous. They had pierced its scales, a pain so sharp and shocking it had ignited a rage that consumed everything. That rage turned to fire. That fire became a legend. From that day forward, every race that crossed its path saw the dragon not as a creature, but as a living disaster, a force of nature to be feared and fled. No one had ever tried to understand it. No one had ever looked past the flames. Until now. The dragon opened its eye again, the movement slow, deliberate, like a continent shifting. This time, there was no burning threat behind the vast, golden iris. Only a deep, immeasurable age and an endless, silent memory. Its gaze focused once more on the small, fragile figure standing before it. A thought, a voice, echoed not through the air, but directly into the minds of every living being nearby. "You touched me," the dragon said, its mental tone a deep, resonant hum. "No one survives that." The child looked up, their face open and honest, their voice clear in the shared mental space. "You did not want to hurt me." The dragon paused. That simple, unshakable thought struck deeper than any weapon ever had. It was a truth so pure it bypassed eons of rage and pain. On the decks of alien science vessels, whispers of fear and confusion erupted. Their sophisticated sensors, their complex data models, all of it was failing them. The dragon's energy pattern was changing, shifting from chaotic and destructive to something else entirely. It was stabilizing, becoming peaceful. With a slowness that defied its immense size, the dragon shifted its massive head closer, lowering it until its snout was only a few steps away from the child. Its breath, a gentle exhalation, warmed the air, but no longer carried the promise of searing flame. "Why did you come?" the dragon asked, the question resonating with genuine curiosity. The child thought for a moment, a small, serious expression on their face. Then they answered with a truth that would reshape the cosmos. "You were alone." Across the silent, watching fleets, beings of 100 different species felt a cold, unsettling crawl of realization. The dragon had been called many things throughout history: angry, violent, apocalyptic. But lonely? No one had ever described the destroyer of worlds as lonely. And that one word changed everything. The dragon's claw moved, the tips digging slightly into the moon's stone as it adjusted its colossal weight. A single careless twitch, a momentary lapse in control, could still obliterate the child. On human command bridges, officers tensed, muscles coiled, ready to scream orders that would be utterly useless. But the dragon was careful. For the first time in its long, violent existence, it was being careful around someone else. It studied the child's small form. No armor, no technological enhancements, no psychic shield to ward off its immense power, just a fragile body of flesh and bone that, by all logic, should not have survived even being this close. "Your kind fears me," the dragon stated, a simple observation. "They build weapons. They run." The child nodded, accepting the truth of it. "We fear many things," the child replied softly, "but we still care." That answer echoed through the dragon's mind, a single word resonating with the force of a supernova. Care. The word unlocked a memory buried so deep it was almost forgotten. A time before the wars, before the stars burned with the light of its fury. A time when it had protected its own kind, when its massive body had curled around warm, smooth eggs instead of cold, shattered ruins. Pain had stolen that life from it. Fear had replaced it. The dragon lifted its head, its gaze sweeping across the starfield toward the watching fleets. The alien ships drifted like glittering insects before an approaching storm. Their weapon ports were open, their energy signatures primed, though no one dared to be the one to fire the first shot. "They will never trust me," the dragon said, a statement of fact, not of self-pity. The child followed its gaze out into the stardusted darkness. "They will learn," the child answered, their confidence a beacon in the void. The dragon released a long, slow breath, but this time, it did not melt stone or vaporize metal. Instead, the gentle gust of cosmic air pushed floating debris gently aside, clearing the space round the broken moon. It was a sign, a conscious choice. The dragon was choosing not to be a weapon. In the alien command centers, leaders began to panic. The situation was spiraling beyond their comprehension. "This cannot continue," one commander demanded, its voice a series of harsh clicks. "If the humans control the dragon—" "No," another, wiser leader interrupted. "You don't understand. They don't control it." And that truth was infinitely more frightening. The dragon turned its attention back to the child, its gaze now holding something akin to reverence. "You showed me something," it said into their minds. "Something no empire, no fleet, no weapon ever did." The child tilted their head, a picture of innocence. "I just said hello." And that was when the dragon did something that shattered the last remaining vestiges of fear across the galaxy. It lowered its head, slowly, gracefully, until its massive horned brow rested fully on the cold ground. It was a gesture known and understood by countless species, a universal sign. Submission, respect. The galaxy froze. Ships powered down their non-essential systems, their lights dimming in the black. No one wanted to be the first to react, to misinterpret, to break the sanctity of this impossible peace. The dragon, the destroyer of worlds, was bowing to a human child. The child stepped forward again, slowly, carefully. They reached out and placed both of their small hands on one of the dragon's massive, iridescent scales. They leaned in, and with a gentle, trusting softness, they kissed it once more. The dragon closed its eye. A ripple of energy pulsed outward, but it wasn't violent or destructive. It was deep, steady, and warm, like the beat of a living heart. The very fabric of space seemed to grow warmer, safer, as if a storm that had raged for millennia had finally passed without a single drop of rain. On the alien science vessels, sensors finally stabilized. An old, reptilian scientist whispered in awe, "This breaks every known law of xenobiology and cosmic physics." The human officers watched in stunned, tearful silence. They felt a surge of pride so profound it hurt. And they felt fear, because they, more than anyone, understood what this truly meant. Humanity was not strong because of its weapons or its starships. It was strong because of its empathy. The dragon lifted its head slightly, its golden eye fixing on the fleet's raid before it. One final thought, clear and absolute as a law of nature, echoed into every mind present. "The child is under my protection." Those 6 words resonated like the striking of a universal law. No fleet moved closer. No empire dared to issue a challenge. The dragon had made its choice. The child stepped back, a small, satisfied smile on their face. They sat down on the warm stone near the dragon's head, curling up as if they were beside a giant, sleeping family pet. The dragon rested again, its breathing now a calm, steady rhythm that pulsed through the sector. The deadliest creature in the galaxy had found peace, and because of a child who was not afraid to say hello, the galaxy would never, ever be the same again. The silence did not last long. Across the galaxy, panic spread faster than light. Alien leaders stared at their screens, their eyes fixed on the same impossible image, replaying it over and over again. A human child, small and seemingly insignificant, sat right beside the deadliest dragon known to exist. And the dragon? It was resting calmly. No fire, no rage, no cataclysmic destruction. This scene defied all logic, all known laws of the universe. It made no sense. Emergency councils were hastily called on dozens of worlds. Ancient enemies, who had warred for millennia, now met as tentative allies, their shared fear acting as a fragile bridge between them. It wasn't just fear of the dragon anymore that was an old, familiar terror. This was something new, something far more unsettling. It was the fear of what humanity had just done. "This changes everything," one alien elder said, its voice trembling, echoing the sentiment of billions. "If humans can calm it, they can aim it." The implication hung heavy in the air, a weapon of cosmic scale, wielded by a species known for its unpredictability. But others saw it differently. "No," another council member replied, its form flickering on the holographic display. "Look closer. They didn't command it. They didn't threaten it. They didn't control it." The elder's voice dropped to a near whisper, filled with a dawning horror. "That," it said, "is so much worse." The tension was just as thick in human command stations. Generals argued with diplomats, their voices rising in a cacophony of strategy and disbelief. Scientists, meanwhile, begged for more time, desperate to study the flood of incomprehensible data. And all across Earth and its colonies, parents watched the live feed in stunned silence, their hearts stopping as they recognized the small, familiar figure of a child. One single question echoed in every human mind, from the highest echelons of power to the quietest homes. Why did it work? Back on the broken moon, amidst the shattered rock and cosmic dust, the child remained seated near the dragon's colossal head. The massive creature's breathing was slow and rhythmic. Each exhalation sent a gentle, warm wave across the stone, a soothing pulse in the cold void. The dragon opened one of its galaxy-sized eyes and looked at the child. Its voice wasn't spoken, but felt a deep resonance in the mind of every being watching. "They fear you now," the dragon said. The child simply shrugged, a gesture of profound simplicity. "They always fear something," the child replied, their voice clear and unafraid. The dragon studied the small human with an ancient curiosity. Humans were such strange creatures, so small, so fragile, their lifespans a mere blink in its own existence. Yet, they carried something the rest of the galaxy seemed to have lost, or perhaps never truly had, a deep, instinctual capacity for connection. The dragon lifted its head, its gaze sweeping across the distant fleets of warships that hung in the blackness like a swarm of angry insects. "They will come," it stated, a matter of fact, with questions, with weapons. The child nodded, accepting the inevitable. "They always do." The answer held no anger, no fear, only a quiet, sad understanding of the way things were. Back in orbit, a decision had been made. A single alien envoy ship detached from the main fleet and began to move forward, its approach slow and deliberate. Its weapon systems were powered down completely. Its shields were lowered. It was a gesture of absolute vulnerability. The first time any non-human vessel had willingly approached the dragon without hostile intent. The dragon noticed at once. Its eye narrowed, a subtle shift that sent ripples of anxiety through every alien bridge commander. "They are afraid," it observed. The child stood up, turning to face the approaching ship. "Then let them see," the child replied. The dragon considered this. Then, it did something no one, not a single soul in the galaxy, could have ever predicted. It lifted one of its massive, stardusted wings and folded it tighter against its body, lowering its profile, making itself smaller. The internal fire that blazed within its core dimmed, and the ambient temperature around it dropped. It was an unmistakable sign of peace. The envoy ship stopped at a safe distance. A holoprojector flickered to life, and a group of alien leaders appeared. Their forms shimmered, unstable from the immense fear coursing through them and the weak signal strength across the void. They bowed, a deep, reverent bow, first to the dragon. Then, slowly, they turned their bodies to face the human child. This time, the bow was even deeper. Across the galaxy, billions watched in utter disbelief. The dragon's voice once again filled their minds, a broadcast to every ship, every world, every listening ear. "This one," it declared, the thought resonating with the power of a dying star, "showed me kindness when all you showed me was fear." The alien leaders trembled visibly. "We did not know," one of them managed to say, their voice cracking. "We believed you were only destruction." The dragon's eye burned brighter for a fleeting moment, a flash of ancient indignation. "So you attacked first." It was not a question. It was a verdict. No one could deny it. The recordings, the history, it was all there. The child stepped forward, physically placing themselves between the dragon and the holographic projection. "You were scared," the child said, their voice cutting through the galactic tension with its simple honesty. "So were we." The alien leaders were speechless. They had prepared for threats, for demands, for a declaration of human dominance. They had not prepared for empathy. They had not prepared for the truth. Finally, the human diplomats found their voices. An official speaker's voice came through the open channel, calm and measured. "We are not here to rule," she said. "We are here to survive, the same as everyone else." That single statement shook the alien councils to their very core. Humanity had just tamed the untamable, had befriended the ultimate cosmic horror, and yet they asked for nothing. No territory, no tribute, no surrender. The dragon lowered its head slightly once more. "I will not burn your worlds," it declared to the galaxy, "but I will not be hunted again." The message was clear. The age of attacking monsters was over. Slowly, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, the alien fleets began to pull back. It wasn't a retreat, not in the military sense. It was a withdrawal born of respect. All across the stars, orders were sent out to update every record, every warning, every law. The dragon was no longer classified as a target. It was now recognized as a sovereign force, and humanity, for better or for worse, was inextricably tied to it. On human worlds, the reaction was a maelstrom of emotions. Pride, certainly, but also fear, and an overwhelming sense of awe. Parents hugged their children a little tighter that night. Leaders began to grasp the true weight, the immense cost, of what had just happened. From this day forward, humanity would never be ignored again. Back on the moon, the child returned to the dragon's side, leaning against its warm, obsidian-like scales. The great beast shifted its position slightly, a minute adjustment to make the child's resting spot safer, more secure. It was a small gesture, but it sent a powerful message across the cosmos. The dragon spoke again, its voice now quiet, meant only for the child. "You changed the path of many stars today." The child smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "I just didn't want you to be alone." The dragon closed its eye, and for the first time in its impossibly long existence, it slept without fear of attack. Across the galaxy, a new and unsettling truth began to settle in the minds of every intelligent species. Humans were not dangerous because they were strong, or because they had powerful weapons. They were dangerous because they could turn an enemy into an ally. And everyone knew, with a chilling certainty, this was not the end. It was the beginning of something far, far more terrifying. The galaxy did not sleep that cycle. News of the dragon's choice, the bond it had formed, spread faster than any hyperwave warning signal ever had. On distant, glittering worlds, on dusty frontier outposts, countless screens showed the same impossible image, replaying it again and again. The deadliest known creature in the universe, the Star Eater, resting peacefully beside a small human child. Empires that had ruled for thousands of years, whose histories were written in the light of conquered suns, felt something entirely new, a cold, creeping uncertainty. Emergency laws were passed within hours. Mighty fleets, patrolling the galactic rim, were recalled with frantic urgency. Borders that had been open for centuries were slammed shut and fortified. Ancient treaties, gathering dust in holographic archives, were pulled up and reread with shaking hands and desperate eyes. From the core worlds to the outer arms, every great power, every clandestine council, every warlord and every diplomat asked the same terrifying question. What happens if the humans ask the dragon to fight for them? What happens when a species known for its resilience and stubbornness can now call upon a god? Some leaders, proud and blinded by their own power, refused to believe the truth. "This is a trick," one snarled to his assembled generals. "A clever human illusion. No child can control a creature of that magnitude." But others, the strategists and thinkers who saw the deeper patterns, were far more afraid. "They don't control it," a wizened advisor whispered in a different war room. "They understand it." And that single difference, the chasm between control and understanding, terrified them to their very core. On a distant capital world, shrouded in artificial night, a secret council met in absolute darkness. These were the ones who had orchestrated the first attack on the dragon's nesting grounds long ago. It was their fleets that had fired the first salvos. It was their worlds that had paid the terrible, fiery price for that arrogance. And now, they faced not just defeat, but total extinction. "If the dragon remembers us," one of them whispered, the sound swallowed by the gloom, "if it remembers what we did, we are already dead." A tense silence filled the chamber before another council member slammed a heavy, clawed fist onto the cold obsidian table. "Then we strike first," they roared. "We end the humans now, before they realize the power they hold, before they grow any stronger." The decision was made in that desperate moment. A hidden fleet, a ghost armada held in reserve for just such a doomsday scenario, began to move through the secret byways of space. Back at the broken moon where humanity had made its stand, the dragon stirred, its colossal eye opened slowly, the iris a swirling nebula of gold and fire. glowing brighter than before. It felt something shift across the vast emptiness between the stars. A familiar, ugly sensation. Fear. Hatred. A pointed, murderous intent. The child, sitting nearby, noticed at once. "You're awake," the child said softly, their voice a small island of calm in a sudden tension. A low rumble vibrated through the rock. "Yes," the dragon replied, its voice a thought that bloomed directly in the child's mind. "Someone has chosen violence." Human military sensors screamed to life only seconds later. A fleet, moving impossibly fast, weapons hot, broadcasting old, forbidden stealth signatures. The commanders recognized the technology instantly. It was the same kind used in the devastating wars against the dragon generations ago. Panic flared on the bridge of the human command ship. "We can't win this," one officer said, his face pale. "They're too many, too advanced." "Not without," the sentence hung in the air, unfinished, because everyone on that bridge, everyone in the human fleet, knew what came next. They all turned their heads, almost as one, looking through the viewports toward the silent, immense form resting on the moon below. They all looked toward the dragon. As if in answer, the dragon rose to its full, terrifying height. Stars winked out, eclipsed behind the impossible span of its wings. The fractured moon beneath its feet cracked further, groaning under the sudden shift of its immense weight. Ethereal fire, brighter than any sun, rolled along its crystalline scales. Across the system, alien scout ships that had been observing from a distance pulled back in sheer terror, their engines screaming. The child stood up, unafraid, and placed a small hand against the dragon's warm, vibrating side. "No," the child said, the word small but firm. The dragon paused. The fire along its scales dimmed slightly. From a stellar inferno to a mere volcanic glow. "They will try to kill you," the dragon warned, its mental voice a deep, resonant bell. The child looked up, meeting the creature's galaxy-sized gaze without a tremor. "Then let's stop them," the child said. Without burning everything, the dragon studied the small being before it. There was no fear in the child's eyes. No hate, only a quiet, unshakable resolve. And in that moment, the dragon made a choice. It did not roar. It did not breathe fire or unleash a wave of destructive energy. Instead, it spread its magnificent wings wide and sent out a signal not of fire, not of force, but of pure, undiluted presence. A psychic pressure that rolled through the fabric of space like a deep, silent ocean wave, moving at the speed of thought. The attacking fleet felt it instantly. Aboard hundreds of warships, consoles flickered and died. Emergency lights sputtered and failed. Crews collapsed at their stations, overwhelmed by the crushing weight of an ancient, primordial will pressing directly into their minds. Weapons systems shut down. Engines sputtered and went silent. The entire armada stopped dead in space. Completely. Then, the dragon spoke, its voice a chorus in the minds of every being on every ship. "You hunted me," it said, the thought carrying the weight of eons. "You feared me." A wave of their own terror was reflected back at them. "You chose war again." The enemy commanders, pinned in their command chairs, tried to answer, to justify, to beg, but their thoughts were crushed into dust by the sheer force of the dragon's presence. "The child chose peace," the dragon's voice continued, echoing in the sudden silence of their minds. "So, you will live." And just like that, the pressure lifted. The fleet drifted helplessly, disarmed and utterly silent in the void. Across the galaxy, leaders who had been watching the confrontation on their tactical displays stared in a mixture of horror and profound awe. The dragon had ended a war without firing a single shot, without causing a single casualty, and it had done so because a human child had asked it to. That was the moment the galactic balance of power truly broke, not with an explosion, but with a whisper. Messages flooded human diplomatic channels, frantic requests for talks, humbled requests for protection, even outright apologies from powerful races that had once openly mocked humanity as a weak, insignificant species. Human diplomats, accustomed to being the galactic underdogs, struggled to keep up with the deluge. "We never asked for any of this," one ambassador said quietly, staring at a list of supplicants. "But it came anyway," another replied, their voice full of wonder. On the broken moon, the dragon lowered itself again, returning to its peaceful rest. The child sat down beside it once more, the familiar warmth of comfort. "They will keep testing us," the dragon observed, its gaze fixed on the distant stars. The child nodded, leaning against the creature's side. "Humans get tested a lot," the child replied. That simple, tired statement carried centuries of struggle, of survival against all odds. The dragon seemed to consider this. "Your kind survives not by strength," it finally mused. its voice softer now, but by heart. The child smiled, a genuine, bright smile. My parents say that too. A deep, rumbling sound vibrated from the dragon's chest, a sound that might, in any other creature, have been laughter. On distant worlds, the true meaning of the day's events began to settle in. Humanity had not gained a weapon of mass destruction. They had gained trust. And trust, the galaxy was beginning to realize far too late, was infinitely more powerful and more dangerous than fear. Empires began to cautiously bend their hardline policies. Borders softened almost imperceptibly. Old, bitter wars paused, as if both sides were holding their breath. No one wanted to be the next enemy that humanity tried to understand, because if humanity ever stopped trying to understand you, the dragon would remember. As the stars burned quietly overhead, the child leaned against the dragon's warm, living scales and felt a sense of peace. The galaxy held its breath, knowing one final, paradigm-shifting truth. The future no longer belonged to those who ruled by force. It belonged to those who could calm a monster. The galaxy didn't change with a bang. There was no cataclysmic explosion, no final, glorious battle. No planets burned to mark the passing of an era. Instead, the universe shifted in the quiet moments, in the choices that weren't made, in the fleets that turned back instead of charging forward into the unknown. The change was silent, but profound. Near the shattered remnants of a broken moon, the dragon rested. It slept more now, a deep and genuine sleep, not the restless, ever-watchful slumber of a hunted animal. The human stations nearby, once fragile outposts on a dangerous frontier, began to flourish. They grew stronger, safer. The old trade routes, long abandoned out of fear, slowly reopened. Commerce flowed once again through the star lanes. Pirates, who had preyed on these sectors for generations, simply vanished. They didn't need to be fought. They just disappeared, knowing better than to trespass. No one dared to test the invisible boundary that now marked this region of space, because everyone knew who watched over it. The child, the catalyst for this new peace, did not remain with the dragon forever. One day, a human transport ship arrived. It wasn't a warship bristling with weapons, nor was it a grand command vessel. It was just a simple ship, and waiting inside were two parents, their faces a mixture of overwhelming fear and immense pride. The child stood beside the great dragon one last time, a small figure against its colossal, shimmering form. "You'll be okay," the child said, their voice soft but steady. The dragon lowered its massive head, its eyes like twin stars gazing down. "So will you," it replied, its voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the very ground. The child placed a small hand against one of the dragon's enormous scales. There was no kiss this time, just a quiet, shared understanding that transcended words. Then, the child turned and walked away. The dragon watched as the small transport lifted off, its engines glowing softly before it became just another point of light, disappearing into the vast tapestry of the stars. The great beast did not follow. It did not chase. It had chosen its place in the cosmos. It was no longer a destroyer. It was a guardian. Across the galaxy, leaders and strategists were forced to adjust to a new and startling reality. In the high councils where the fates of stars were decided, humans were no longer dismissed or ignored. Their words now carried an unexpected weight. This newfound influence didn't come from the size of their fleets or the power of their weapons, but from a single, universally acknowledged truth. Humans listened when long-simmering border disputes threatened to erupt into open conflict. It was humans who were invited to speak. When ancient enemies stood on the brink of war, human mediators were called upon to calm the rising tensions. It wasn't because humans were perfect or morally superior, far from it. It was because they had proven something that no other species had ever managed to demonstrate. They had shown that it was possible to face unimaginable fear without becoming that fear themselves. Alien historians, with a sense of awe and confusion, began the painstaking process of rewriting their records. The dragon was no longer classified as a cosmic disaster, a force of nature to be fled or destroyed. It was now listed as a sovereign protector, a power unto itself. And humanity? Humanity was listed as the only species to have ever earned its trust. That single line in the history books would send shivers down the spines of future generations. In military academies across the stars, young alien cadets were taught a new, crucial lesson. If you ever encounter humans, their instructors would say, their voices grave, do not mistake their softness for weakness. Remember, they survived the monsters of the universe not by outfighting them, but by choosing compassion when everyone else chose violence. As the centuries passed, the dragon spoke less and less. It no longer felt the need to explain itself or justify its existence. Its presence alone was enough. But once, during a rare, galaxy-wide council broadcast, it broke its long silence. It sent a single, simple message that resonated across every known channel, reaching every world and every species. I was feared, the message began, because I reflected your own violence back at you. I was calmed, it continued, because a child reflected your own hope. The message concluded with a simple choice: choose which future you want. No empire offered a direct response. They didn't need to. The message was understood. Human worlds continued to grow and thrive, quietly protected, not by a shield of fear, but by a blanket of respect. The dragon never attacked again. It never had to, because no one dared to cross that line. A final, profound understanding settled deep into the galaxy's shared consciousness. If humans ever truly chose war, if they ever decided to unleash their full potential for conflict, no force in the known universe could likely stop them. But they didn't choose war. They chose to understand the very things that others sought only to kill. And in that choice, they found a strength that was truly unstoppable. On a distant, peaceful human world, the child grew old. They never told anyone the full story of their time with the dragon. To them, it had never been about destiny or gaining power or changing the galaxy. It had been much simpler. It had been about seeing someone who was alone and scared, and offering a moment of connection. Years later, when the question was asked what humans were truly best at, a quiet answer spread among the stars, passed from one species to another in hushed, respectful tones. Humans don't conquer monsters, people would say. They sit beside them. And the galaxy remembered the day everything changed. It wasn't the day a superweapon was fired. It wasn't the day a grand fleet arrived to claim victory. It was the day a small human child, armed with nothing but courage and empathy, kissed the deadliest dragon in the galaxy. And the universe, in that single, gentle moment, chose peace. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more tales from the far reaches of space. We'll see you in the next one.